The wheels of the plane screamed against the runway, as I stood frozen behind the glass, watching my son's car disappear into the parking structure, my phone dead, my wallet gone, my name echoing one last time in his voicemail. I pressed my palm to the cold airport window, and felt something inside me crack quietly. The kind of crack that doesn't make noise until it destroys everything. 70 years old, abandoned, and finally awake. I had trusted them with the blind faith of a father who believed love was a lifetime contract. Arjun, my only son, had insisted on the trip. Just a short visit, Papa. We'll take care of everything. His wife, Mira, smiled that thin smile that never reached her eyes. I noticed it too late. I noticed everything too late. At the check-in counter, Arjun took my documents to help. Mira offered to get coffee. Then the call came, fake panic in Arjun's voice. Papa, there's an emergency at home. They never came back. Hours passed. Then night. Then humiliation. I slept on a plastic chair, my coat wrapped tight. Hunger gnawing at me like a memory I couldn't shake. The airport lights buzzed overhead, merciless and white. I counted footsteps. I counted breaths. I counted how many times I replayed raising that boy, his first steps, his first bicycle, the nights I stayed awake so he could sleep peacefully. By morning, I understood something important. They didn't forget me. They discarded me. I borrowed a phone from a janitor with kind eyes and broken English. One call. Just one. Hello? It was my old friend Samuel. We hadn't spoken in years. I need help, I said. My voice didn't shake. That surprised me. Samuel arrived by noon. He didn't ask questions. He never did. As we drove away from the airport, I watched the building shrink in the mirror, my humiliation sealed inside it like a tomb. That night, lying on Samuel's couch, I didn't cry. I didn't curse. I didn't pray. I planned. You see, Arjun forgot something. Before I became old, I was powerful. Before I became quiet, I built things. The company he now ran, his prawn, was still standing on foundations I designed. Legal foundations. Financial foundations, fragile ones. For weeks, I stayed invisible. I let them believe I was broken, lost, probably dead. Mira even posted a vague status online. Some people choose their own paths. I saved it. I visited banks they didn't know existed. I met lawyers who still stood up when I entered the room. I signed papers with steady hands and a calm smile. Arjun laughed when the auditors came. He stopped laughing when the accounts froze. Mira screamed when the investors pulled out. She went silent when the house they lived in. My house was legally reclaimed. They tried calling me, hundreds of times. I let the phone ring. Silence, I had learned, is sharper than any blade. The final meeting was my gift to them. They walked into the conference room expecting mercy. They found me waiting, seated at the head of the table, calm, composed, reborn. Arjun's face collapsed. Papa, where were you? I looked at him the way one looks at strangers. At the airport, I said softly, still waiting. Mira tried to speak. I raised a finger. She stopped. I slid a folder across the table. Inside were documents, timestamps, signatures, every betrayal mapped with surgical precision. You left me with nothing, I continued. So I took back what was always mine. Arjun fell to his knees. Not dramatically. Just empty, please, he whispered. I stood. My legs were strong again. I begged once too. I said, you were busy driving away. I walked out without looking back. Months later, I boarded another plane. First class this time. My wallet full, my phone charged, my name respected again. As the aircraft lifted into the sky, I closed my eyes, not in pain, not in regret, but in peace. Because revenge isn't loud, it doesn't scream, it waits. The city below shrank into a grid of lights as the plane cut through the clouds, but my mind stayed firmly on the ground, on the wreckage quietly unfolding behind me. Revenge, I had learned, is not a single strike. It is a sequence. A slow choreography of consequences. I landed in a different country under a different version of myself. No one here called me Papa. No one spoke to me with obligation wrapped in fake affection. Here, I was just a man with a history people respected and a future people underestimated. The first letter reached me a week later. It was from Arjun. Handwritten. Crooked. Desperate. I don't know what I was thinking. Mira made me do it. Please come back. We can fix this. I read it once, then again. Then I folded it carefully and placed it in my coat pocket, like one keeps a photograph of someone already dead. Mira's message came next, an email sent from a lawyer's account. Clinical. Threatening in its own cowardly way. She wanted a settlement, she wanted silence, she wanted to survive. I smiled for the first time in months. They still thought this was a negotiation. They didn't know that while they were scrambling to keep their lives from collapsing, I had already stepped several moves ahead. The board was bigger than they imagined, and they were standing right in the center of it. Back home, the whispers had begun. Arjun's company, the one he paraded on social media as his own creation, was under investigation. Not because of me directly. No. That would have been too obvious. But because I had gently reminded certain regulatory bodies of practices they might want to examine. Old emails resurfaced. Old shortcuts suddenly mattered. The kind of shortcuts taken by people who believe blood will always protect them. Mira tried to distance herself publicly. She changed her last name back. She told friends she had always felt something was wrong. Betrayal eating betrayal. It was almost poetic. Almost. One evening, as rain streaked down the windows of my apartment, Samuel called. "They're fighting," he said. I closed my eyes. I could see it perfectly. How badly? Bad enough that neighbors called the police. I said nothing. Just listened to the rain. The next phase required patience. Real patience. The kind that hurts. I started speaking at closed-door events. No cameras. No press. Just rooms full of people who made decisions that never appeared in headlines. I spoke about legacy, about trust. About how easily power corrupts those who think they earned it without sacrifice. They listened. Names were remembered. Doors quietly closed. Arjan's world began to shrink. He sold his car. Then his watch. Then his pride. Mira left first, of course she did. People like her always jump ship before it fully sinks. She took what she could and vanished into her parents' house. Already telling a new version of the story, where she was the victim and I was the villain. Arjun had no one. That's when he came to me. I was sitting in a cafe, stirring my tea slowly, when I felt it. The hesitation behind me, the weight of a presence afraid to speak. "Papa," he said. The word sounded wrong now. Foreign. I didn't turn around. I lost everything. He continued, his voice cracking in places he didn't know how to control. "She's gone. The company's gone. I don't even know who I am anymore." I took a sip of tea calm. Unrushed. "You knew who you were at the airport," I said. Silence dropped between us like a dropped glass, sharp, irreversible. He moved closer. I could smell desperation on him. It was sour. Familiar. "I made a mistake," he whispered. I finally turned. I didn't see my son. I saw a man who had gambled on cruelty and lost. "A mistake," I repeated softly, "is forgetting a birthday. A mistake is saying the wrong thing in anger." I leaned closer, my voice steady, almost kind. "What you did was a decision." Tears slid down his face. Real ones. Too late ones. "I slept on a bench that night," I went on. "Do you know how many people walked past me without looking? I thought of you every minute. Not with hate. With hope." I paused. "Hope is expensive, Arjun. You spent all of mine." He reached for my hand. I stood up. "I'm not here to forgive you," I said. "I'm here to make sure you understand." "Understand what?" "That the world you tried to throw me into, I learned how to rule it. I left money on the table for the tea. More than enough. Always more than enough now." Behind me he called my name. Not by my name. I didn't answer. Weeks later, Mira tried one last move. A public interview. Carefully styled. Carefully scripted. She painted me as a controlling old man. Claimed emotional abuse. Claimed fear. It lasted 12 hours. By morning, screenshots appeared, old messages, old recordings. Her voice. Her words. Her laughter at the airport, joking about how the old man won't survive a night anyway. She disappeared after that. Social media wiped. Phone disconnected. Reputation erased so thoroughly it was as if she had never existed at all. I watched the news clip in silence. Not satisfaction, completion. But not the end. Because revenge doesn't end when the enemy falls. It ends when they live long enough to understand exactly why they fell, and have no one left to blame but themselves. And Arjun. He still wakes up every day. Still breathes. Still remembers the sound of car tires pulling away while his father stood alone under fluorescent lights, holding a boarding pass that led nowhere. I let him live with that. For now. Time passed, but not gently. Time circled Arjun like a predator that enjoyed the chase more than the kill. Every morning he woke up expecting relief, and found only memory. Every night he tried to sleep, and heard the echo of rolling suitcases, boarding announcements, the hollow sound of abandonment replaying in his skull. I knew, because I watched. From a distance so clean it felt surgical. I moved cities again. New address. Same shadow. People assume revenge requires proximity. They're wrong. Distance sharpens intention. Distance removes doubt. My name began surfacing in places Arjun never imagined I still belonged. Boards. Trusts. Quiet committees where decisions were made without applause. I didn't push. I merely existed, and my existence alone changed trajectories. Meanwhile, Arjun descended. He tried applying for jobs. His resume impressed until the background checks finished. Doors closed with polite smiles. Phones stopped ringing. He learned a lesson too late. Reputation is not what you claim, it's what remains when no one is watching. He started drinking. Not the social kind. The lonely kind. The kind that tastes like punishment. Once, he stood outside my old house for hours. The one I had reclaimed and sold. He stared at the locked gate as if waiting for a ghost to forgive him. Neighbors noticed. Police came. He left without a word. I heard all of it. I heard when he called Samuel. I just want to talk to him. Arjun said, voice thin, fraying. I don't even need money. I just need him to look at me like I still exist. Samuel told me later. His jaw was tight when he spoke. You could end this? He said. One word from you. I stirred my coffee slowly, watching the surface ripple. I am ending it, I replied. Just not the way he wants. Pain teaches faster than mercy ever does. Then something unexpected happened. Mira resurfaced. Not publicly, never that careless again. She reached out through intermediaries. Through people who thought I wouldn't recognize her handwriting, hidden behind legal phrasing. She was desperate. More desperate than Arjun. Her parents' money had dried up. Old allies distanced themselves. The scandal had followed her like a stain that wouldn't wash out. She wanted to meet. I agreed. Not out of curiosity. Out of control. We met in a private room of a hotel restaurant. Neutral ground. No witnesses. She arrived dressed carefully, too carefully. Power dressing for someone who had none left. She didn't sit immediately. She studied my face like it might suddenly soften. It didn't. You look well, she said. So do you? I replied, lying without effort. She sat. I won't apologize, she said quickly. Not because I'm not sorry, but because you don't want that. I raised an eyebrow. Interesting. She was learning. I want closure, she continued. This has gone far enough. I leaned back, folding my hands. You left an old man to sleep on plastic chairs with no money, I said calmly. Tell me, Mira, how far was that supposed to go? Her lips trembled. Just slightly. We thought you'd call someone, she said. We didn't think. You didn't think. I interrupted softly. That's the most honest thing you've said, she swallowed. What do you want? She asked. There it was. The question everyone asks when they finally understand they're not in control. I want you to live, I said. Her eyes widened. Relief rushed in too quickly. But not comfortably. I continued. I want every door to open just enough for you to see what you lost, then close. I want every relationship you build to rot from the inside, because truth follows you like a smell you can't scrub off. Her breath hitched. And Arjun? She asked. I smiled, not kindly. Arjun is already living his punishment. She stood abruptly. You're cruel. No, I said. I'm accurate. She left without another word. That night, I dreamed of the airport again. Same lights. Same cold, but this time I wasn't alone. People walked past me, yes, but they were shadows. And I was no longer asking them to stop. I woke up rested. Weeks later, Arjun did something reckless. He showed up at an event where I was speaking. I felt him before I saw him. Desperation has a weight to it, it bends rooms. He stood at the back, thinner, older, eyes hollowed out by regret. When our eyes met, he flinched. I didn't. After the talk, people crowded around me. Handshakes. Respect, the kind he used to think was automatic. He waited until the room thinned. He said quietly. I paused. That's new, I replied. I blame myself? He continued. I was weak. I let her convince me that you were a burden. That you'd forgive us because you always did. I looked at him then. Really looked. I did forgive you, I said. Hope flickered in his eyes, stupid, fragile hope. Before the airport, I added. The flicker died. I don't want revenge, he said. I just want to understand how you stopped loving me. I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only he could hear. I didn't stop loving you, I said. I stopped protecting you from the consequences of who you chose to become. His shoulders sagged. That's worse, he whispered. Yes, I said, it is. Security approached. I nodded subtly. They guided him away without drama. As he disappeared into the crowd, something inside me shifted, not softened, not hardened, but clarified. This wasn't about destruction anymore. It was about inevitability. I began setting things in motion that would take years to fully unfold. Trusts restructured, wills rewritten, futures quietly redirected away from blood and toward intention. I funded programs, mentored strangers, built legacies that did not carry my name but carried my values. Arjun watched from the outside, aware enough to see the shape of what I was building, but never allowed close enough to touch it. Sometimes, late at night, I wondered if he still heard the airport in his dreams. I hoped he did. Because memory is the only prison with no escape. Years didn't pass. They accumulated. Layer by layer. Like dust on a forgotten photograph, until the image beneath was almost unrecognizable. I grew older, yes, but not smaller. Age did not bend me, it clarified me. My days became deliberate. My nights quiet. I slept well now. The kind of sleep that comes when nothing is chasing you anymore. Arjun, on the other hand, was being hunted by time. He drifted from city to city, job to job, carrying his name like a curse he couldn't lift. Sometimes he introduced himself with a shortened version. Sometimes he lied outright. It never lasted. Someone always remembered. Someone always whispered. The past has a way of finding its way into rooms it was never invited to. Once, he worked at a logistics firm. Low position. Long hours. He lasted 6 months, until a senior partner recognized his surname and made a call. Another door closed. Another lesson delivered without words. I didn't orchestrate all of it. That's the part people misunderstand. I didn't need to. Gravity does most of the work once you step out of the way. Samuel visited me one afternoon, years after the airport. You know he still talks about you? He said carefully. We were sitting on my balcony, watching the city breathe below us. Does he? I replied. He says you're the only person who ever truly saw him. And the only one he betrayed. I nodded slowly. That sounds like him. Samuel hesitated. Do you ever think about ending it? I looked at him then, really looked. Ending what? I asked. This, he said, gesturing vaguely. The punishment. I turned back to the skyline. There's no punishment anymore, I said. There's just reality. That night, I received a call I didn't expect, from Arjun. I almost didn't answer. Almost. Hello, I said. There was breathing on the other end, ragged, nervous. Like a man standing on the edge of something he didn't understand. I won't ask you to forgive me, he said quickly. I know better now. I said nothing. I just wanted you to know. He continued, I finally understand what you lost that night. I was at the airport today. Different one. Different country. But it smelled the same. My grip tightened on the phone. I saw an old man sitting alone, Arjun said. People walked past him like he was furniture. And for the first time I felt sick. Silence stretched. I wanted to go sit next to him, he whispered. But I didn't. I was afraid he'd look at me. I closed my eyes. Good, I said quietly. Fear means something reached you. He laughed softly, broken. I don't expect anything from you. I just needed to say it out loud. To someone who mattered. You should have said it then. I replied. I know. The line went dead. For a long time, I stood there holding the phone, listening to the echo of a conversation that should have happened years ago. I didn't feel relief. I felt weight. A few months later, Mira tried again. This time, she didn't hide behind lawyers or intermediaries. She sent a simple message. I'm sick. I don't need money. I just don't want to die being remembered only as a monster. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I deleted the message. Some reputations are earned. Some endings are deserved. Life went on. I attended fewer events. declined more invitations. My world narrowed, not in power, but in noise. I spent mornings reading, afternoons walking, evenings thinking. I thought about the boy Arjun used to be. The way he held my finger crossing the street. The way he cried the first night I left him at boarding school. And the way I came back the next day because I couldn't bear it. I wondered when love stopped being enough. Or if it ever was. Then came the call that changed the rhythm of everything. Arjun had been arrested, not for fraud, not for theft, for assault, a bar fight, alcohol, words exchanged. Someone mentioned my name, mockingly, cruelly. Something snapped. He didn't run. Didn't resist. He just stood there afterward, hands shaking, as if surprised by what he'd done. I visited him once. Not in jail. In the holding room after his arraignment. He looked up when I entered. His eyes widened, not in hope, but disbelief. "You came," he said. "Yes," I replied. We sat across from each other, glass between us. A familiar setup. "I don't want your help," he said immediately. "I deserve whatever happens." I studied him. "Do you?" I asked. He nodded. "I think so." I leaned forward. "Then you've learned nothing," he frowned. "Punishment isn't about what you deserve," I continued. "It's about what you do next." He swallowed hard. "I don't know how to fix this," he said. "I didn't either," I replied. "Not at first." We sat in silence. Then I stood. "I won't save you," I said. "But I won't stop you from saving yourself." His eyes filled. That was the last time we spoke face to face. After that, I made one final set of arrangements. Quiet ones, permanent ones, documents sealed, instructions precise. I was not leaving chaos behind. I was leaving clarity. Arjun would receive nothing easily, nothing directly. But pathways would exist, narrow, difficult, honest, if he chose them. If he didn't, the world would continue exactly as it always had. Indifferent. On my last flight, another airport, another set of lights. I sat by the window and watched families say goodbye. Some hugged too long. Some not long enough. No one noticed me. I smiled at that. Because anonymity is freedom when you've already been seen at your worst. As the plane taxied forward, I thought of the first night. The cold floor. The silence. The moment something inside me broke, and became unbreakable. This wasn't an ending. It was a long echo. The doctors called it manageable. That word always amuses me. As if life itself has ever been manageable. I listened politely as they explained treatments, timelines, probabilities. I nodded at the right moments. Asked the right questions. When they finished, I thanked them and walked out alone into the sunlight, feeling lighter than I had in years. Knowing the end gives you a strange kind of power. I didn't tell Samuel right away. I didn't tell anyone. Some truths lose their meaning the moment they're shared. This one was mine. I spent the next months closing circles, visiting places that had shaped me, meeting people who had once stood by me when I was still becoming someone. I gave without announcing it was a goodbye. One afternoon, while organizing old papers, I found the boarding pass from that night. Wrinkled, faded, still legible. I stared at it for a long time. Then placed it inside a book Arjun loved as a child. The kind of book that teaches you the world is cruel, but honesty survives. I mailed it to him with no note. Let him understand in his own time. The news of Mira came quietly. She didn't die dramatically. No apologies, no final speeches. Just a brief notice buried under other headlines. Another life concluded without ceremony. I felt nothing. That surprised me most of all. Arjun wrote again after receiving the book. Not a letter, a single line. I finally sat next to the man at the airport. I read it twice. Then I burned the paper. Some moments are meant to disappear once they've done their work. My health declined slowly. Gracefully, if such a thing exists. I lost weight, lost stamina, gained perspective. Nurses spoke to me gently, the way people do when they sense they're standing near the edge of something irreversible. I remained calm. I had already crossed that edge years ago, under fluorescent lights, with nothing but silence and betrayal to keep me company. Compared to that, this was easy. The final instructions were delivered to Arjun through a trustee. Not money, not assets, something far more dangerous. Truth. Letters, documents. Every choice I made after the airport, laid bare. Not to boast, not to wound, to show him the full map. How one decision fractures into 1,000 consequences. How power isn't seized, it's reclaimed. How patience, when weaponized, outlives rage every time. At the end of the packet was a single sentence, handwritten. I did not destroy your life. I simply stopped standing between you and who you were becoming. Samuel told me later that Arjun locked himself in his apartment for 3 days after reading it. No drinking, no calls, just silence. Good? Silence builds stronger men than comfort ever could. On my last day, I asked to be taken to the airport. The nurse hesitated. Samuel understood immediately. We arrived just before sunset. The terminal buzzed with the same restless energy. Announcements echoed, wheels rolled. Levs intersected for seconds, then vanished. I asked for a chair near the window. I sat. People walked past me. Some glanced didn't. A child waved. I waved back. For a moment, just a moment, I felt the ghost of that old humiliation trying to rise. It didn't. Because I was no longer waiting to be rescued. I was choosing to be here. Samuel stood behind me. Do you regret anything? He asked quietly. I thought about it. No, I said. Regret belongs to people who didn't learn. As the lights outside flickered on, my phone vibrated one last time. A message from Arjun. I'm sitting with him now. He doesn't want anything. I'll stay until his flight boards. I closed my eyes. That was it. Not forgiveness, not reunion, understanding. The most expensive thing of all. When my breathing slowed, there was no fear. Just a deep, settling stillness. Like a long journey finally concluding exactly where it needed to. I left this world the same way I reclaimed myself, quietly, without spectacle, without asking permission. And somewhere in the endless movement of an airport, a man learned too late what abandonment costs. And just in time what presence means. That is how this story ends. Not with revenge shouted into the dark, but with a silence so complete, it echoes forever.